We all know that Belgium is famous for its delicious chocolate, waffles, fries, and Brussels sprouts. But do their stadiums match their food in terms of quality? Let's find out. Here are the Belgian Pro League stadiums. Lotto Park. That is an apt name because personally, if I ever won the lotto, I would probably buy myself a stadium. I'd also question how I won given that I've never purchased a ticket. For those with slight obsessive compulsive tendencies, you probably won't like that the northwest corner had to be cut off like that due to the road, leaving the stadium with an asymmetrical design. But I've found that it's quite difficult to drive through a stadium, so it was necessary. On the inside, that cut off corner looks kinda cool actually, as does the stadium as a whole. Stadion. As you can see, the stadium is coming off a major rebuild a couple of years back. They transformed it from a pretty shabby and drab looking stadium into one of the league's more impressive venues. A remarkable transformation. The stadium is exactly 100 years old and has been home to Royal Antwerp from the get-go. I think this might be the first time for quite some time that the club's supporters have been proud of their stadium, and I don't blame them. Jan Breydel Stadion. Although it's one of Belgium's largest stadiums and home to one of Belgium's biggest clubs, it's far from the most impressive stadium in the league. Not terrible by any means, just a little dated. And a tad on the ugly side. Also, if you happen to be stuck sitting in one of the corners on a rainy day, it's not going to be fun. It's no surprise that Club Rouge has been waiting to build a new stadium for quite some time. For now, they're stuck sharing this with their little bros. I just remembered that I forgot to look up the pronunciation, so I'm just gonna wing it. Stade du Pays de Charleroi. My word, opening in 1939 can't have been a good start to this stadium's life. Just like the last one, this could be described as dated and even has some obstructed views. But unlike the last one, it's got plenty of character. So it is kind of sad to hear that this club is also planning on building a new stadium. Well, a new stadium is good, but it will be a bit of a shame to see this quirky little ground with its trapezoidal stand on one side and zebra-looking stand on the other side go. Curvegg Stadion. Although this seems like a very plain and simple stadium, it does have a bit going on. No two stands are the same. There is some terracing mixed in amongst the mostly seated stands, and every seat in the house is undercover. One downside is that the stadium doesn't have any cantilever roofs, and so a lot of spectators have a pillar in their line of sight. Thankfully, there is a simple solution. Hacksaws are relatively inexpensive from what I understand. I just have no idea how to pronounce that. Sajeka Arena? Anyway, this has an interesting exterior made up of grey stone blocks, which combined with the blue corrugated iron and tinted glass, makes for a unique look. Less so on the inside, but there are some cool features such as the multi-tiered corner sections, and at least it's more interesting than your typical single-tiered bowl. That's because it wasn't built all at once. It slowly but surely grew into what it is today, extension by extension. Galemco Arena. At a little under a decade old, it's comfortably the newest stadium in the league, and it certainly looks the part with that fully glazed facade. I think in the past I said it looks like a horizontal skyscraper. I'd agree with myself, even more so at night time. The interior is just as impressive, especially if you have a considerable amount of disposable income, because there's an extensive amount of premium seating. But from any seat in the house, it's a great stadium. Guldensporen Stadion. The name of the stadium refers to a battle that took place in this town over 700 years ago, the Battle of the Golden Spurs, where the Flemish defeated the French 3-0 I think it was. The Flemish have always been underdogs on paper, but like a frozen egg, they can be tough to beat. What the hell am I talking about? The stadium is a pretty typical, classical, British-style stadium. with a simple, independent stand on each side, but it's decent. Afasstadion. There's also a stadium in the Netherlands that goes by the same name. That one is pretty good, but I think I like the Belgian version even better. Not only is this one of the best stadiums in the league, but it's probably the most distinctive, especially the unusual sloping stand over on the northern side of the ground, the exterior of which is also kinda cool. It has a wide variety of seating options, including plush theatre-style seats, regular seats, and of course some terracing down below as well. Diaz Arena. Wow, a bit of beach action. I knew Belgium had coastline of course, but you never really associate Belgium with beaches. I sorta assumed it was mostly swampland like their neighbours to the north, but nope, mostly sandy. Why do all the British people visit Spain? You got Belgium right here. Anyway, the stadium has just been expanded a few years back. Despite this, it still remains fairly small. It's a solid stadium though, the exterior is pretty modern, and also like the subtle display of club colours on the seating. Den Dreef? Head and Shoulders can sort that out. Hashtag not spawn. This is a bit of an odd one because even though it has long been converted into a football specific stadium, they actually left the running track and some terracing on the outside that remains to this day, which makes it look like the stadium fell from the sky. Perhaps it did, I don't know how Belgium works. It is fairly basic, but the stands along the sidelines are quite steep. I'd like to see that. Stade du Payret. Much like Lotto Park that we saw at the beginning of the video, this is a stadium that's been shaped by its surroundings. In particular, the surrounding roads, with the western stand that backs onto the road being very narrow, and the one on the opposite side being much larger. Not all that long ago, this was a very drab looking stadium, with mostly bare concrete on show. However, they recently livened it up by turning everything red.
Should I stay or should I go?
Stay in. There's your answer. In a serendipitous turn of events, Stay In has a built-in hotel, with plenty of rooms that have a view of the field that you could stay in. Unfortunately, it's not called the Stay Inn, just the Stay In Hotel. I actually think the hotel field corners improve the overall aesthetics of the stadium. Although it was opened in the 1920s, every stand was built in the 21st century. So it's definitely a modern stadium, and a good one. Stade Maurice Dufresne. This is obviously in the French-speaking part of Belgium, but it reminds me of a Dutch stadium. De Groot Veste, to be specific. This one has looked like this for a lot longer, however, ever since it hosted games at the 2000 Euros. It gets the nickname of the Cauldron, partially due to its location right by some steel foundries, but also due to its intense atmosphere. I can see why. 3 sides of the field are lined by a very steep triple-tiered stand that puts spectators right on top of the field. Stade Joseph Marion. Sometimes it doesn't matter if your stadium doesn't boast world-class facilities. A unique setting can be more valuable, and that's certainly the case here. It's been plonked into a beautiful, heavily wooded park that appropriately happens to be in an area of Brussels called Forest. As I alluded to though, the facilities are far from being top-notch. And the main stand is the only area of covered seating. Speaking of the main stand, how is that for a facade? Quite beautiful. Het Kuipje. That name is referencing De Kuip, one of the most famous stadiums in the Netherlands. However, the stadium looks absolutely nothing like it. I suppose it's a bit tongue-in-cheek. In which case, they've earned my respect. From the outside, you could be mistaken for thinking that the stadium was built by a garden shed manufacturer. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Garden sheds serve a worthy purpose. Unlike a lot of the smaller stadiums in this league, there are no beams in anyone's sightline or anything. Garden shed roofs are lightweight. Elindus Arena. A few years back, this was a modest little stadium with a track around the field, but it has since been rectangularized. I just invented a word. So now there is quite an interesting assortment of stands that don't exactly come together to form a well-rounded stadium. However, I believe the transformation is yet to be completed. It will eventually end up looking like a modern, fully enclosed stadium. We'll have to wait and see. So there you have it. There were some pretty impressive stadiums in there. My favourite being the Lemco Arena. It's just so clean, modern and shiny. As always, if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. If you already have, then merci. And for the Dutch speakers, thank you. Thanks for watching, have a good one.